Well, okay. One last thing that Robert's gonna hate, and their news came out that that pretty popular recording artist, who started off as a Christian recording artist, but then as kind of somewhat broken into the mainstream. Uh, Came out and expressed that she was uncertain whether or not homosexuality is a sin.
Yeah. So here's where I have a problem with this.
Do go on.
That so the uh, you know, I don't know if she's still currently a like a worship leader or singer at church or whatever, but being in that type of position, and it does it carries a huge responsibility, because you're the one that is um, leading that time of worship with through the congregation. You're kind of the person that is trying to through music and through prayer, filling the place with God's presence. I mean, it's kind of and for the fact that someone like in her position doesn't at least have a rudimentary understanding of the Bible, for one, is kind of alarming. And it's one of those things where it's she if she had said something like, I don't really like how some Christians have treated um, homosexuality in the past, and I want to do more to um, share that they're we're all sinners alike, we all have different issues, but I want to be able to kind of open a dialogue and still like be able to share the gospel and show them God's love. Okay, great. I'm 100% behind that, because I mean, we in the past as Christians, we've tended to not do very well when it comes to homosexuality. I think a lot of it has to do because it's a sin that's like kind of right in your face, whereas a lot of the other sins that we don't care about are more of internal, private sins that we have. And I'm no saint. Yeah, you know this. Yeah, I
Oh, I
curse.
know.
I'm. I wouldn't say I'm a, ladies' man per se, but ladies have been a part of my life, and we go out, we have fun, but yeah, so it's like I said, but that's more of a more of an internal like thing that I deal with, sin wise, not a. Whereas homosexuality, it's like you can't really, it's kind of like right out for everyone to be able to see, kind of. And I think that's where Christians kind of like, well, at least I'm not that. Let's hate on that because we can see it, which I think has been definitely the wrong approach. But she didn't say that. No, that was not her point. Her point is showing that it's like she's clearly not read the Bible. In which
Right, I think
like,
some of her comments were like, well, she said like, I've read the Bible, but I haven't seen anything that's expressly states that homosexuality is a sin. Maybe maybe someone else who's read the Bible can let me know if there are passages, if those such passages exist. And I think it's a little off-putting that someone who claims that they're a Christian and who got their start within the church to say such things, knowing that there are verses condemning homosexuality.
Well, and I'll do a couple things here. So So a lot of people point to there's a couple things people point to. It's like, okay, well, in the Old Testament, obviously it was in as the law was being um, written down, it was there, and you could say, well, but Jesus kind of fulfilled the law, like, so we don't really need to think about that anymore. It's like, okay, I disagree, but I will I'll grant you that. And some will say that it's like, well, Jesus never really spoke out against uh, you know about this. Like, oh well, I also kind of tend to disagree, but okay, yeah, there's that. Uh, but then you look at something like Romans and Paul. It's a beautiful letter that kind of gives us kind of the full gamut of theology concerning the gospel and Christian living. And in the first chapter, he talks about how we are all terrible, we're all sinful, we don't deserve what we've gotten or what the grace that we've been given. But he talks about how people were choosing for themselves to that they're evil, and that they were given into having lusts and what the hell is the word I'm looking for? Sexual relations with same sex partners and stuff like
Mhm.
that, or with animals and
Yeah. So
I'd have
basically,
to
depravity.
yeah it was just and but that's a part of it. It's like, well, okay, if Paul, who is one of the the big apostles, and he wrote majority of the New Testament. If he's saying these things that, like, oh well, things like this were a huge sin. This is this is what happened because we had distanced ourselves from God. And that's kind of he's using that, especially specifically like that, as an example. That's, I think, a pretty damning uh, sentence. Like, yeah, this is a huge problem. This is a sin, and it's not that uh, becoming a believer, everything's hunky dory, and or you can't become a believer because of these things. That's because a few chapters later he talks about, it's like, yeah, we can't change anything, and it's like God gave us this free gift. We just have to take it, and through that we're justified, even though we are going to sin, and we may sin in those ways. And yeah, but the fact that this supposed worship leader who says she's read the Bible, which I highly doubt, um, and saying something like that, it's like, I don't think she knows exactly. I don't think she knows what she's talking about, and that's a really damning problem for someone that's supposed to be like a leader at church.
Right. My kind of my kind of I guess analysis of it. Um, the whole thing is like, well, because I think there's difference between like God's the law that was written, and I think the standard that He set. You know, uh, and the standard that He set was was from from creation. From when He created the animals, male and female, He created them. And the same, and to men, into man, He created them, male and female. And I think that's and you know God is God. God, He had in His mind that human beings, like I guess all living things, would exist within like this kind of arrangement. It's like man, woman, and that was set, and that was set up to the at the very beginning. So I don't, I think like it there weren't any laws expressly saying. I think that, well, I guess that's why there had to be laws expressly saying that that homosexuality was wrong, because it broke God's standard, or went against God's standard.
Right. Oh yeah, you bring that's also a very good point as well.
Mm-hmm.
And let's also premise this too, because people are going to think, oh, you're homophobes. Like,
I know,
no,
right?
we're
I
not
know.
saying we're not going to
I
go.
can only hope.
Yeah, it's like we're not going to hop in our Trans Am and go, gay
Yes.
bashing
Yes.
in West Hollywood.
Yes. We here at the Circle of Jerks podcast and Nocturnal Transmissions and all permutations of shows that might come out from under this umbrella. We do not care if you like to take it in the butt. We don't like
And
we don't care. We don't. But if you are if you if you consider yourself a believer, if you consider yourself a disciple of Jesus Christ, then we ask you to take a moment and really think about what you believe. Are you
well, and
believing things that you want to believe, or are you trying to adhere yourself to this to the standard of God?
right, and I may
That's
be,
all we're
and
saying here. We're not saying that that gays should be strung up or burned at the stake or anything like that. No, they should be treated. Gay people should be treated as human beings. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. Just treated like people, like anybody else.
right. And I'm going to espouse probably an unpopular opinion, at least in the Christian community. Is like, to me, like, you can still be a Christian and a homosexual. It's because to me, the only we don't have to change anything to accept the gospel.
Well, I mean, okay, this is gonna get spicy real quick, but do you think you can be a practicing homosexual and be a Christian?
I think so.
Yeah, like
And
within like practicing. I mean, yeah.
I mean, I don't know about like some of the. I'll say this because a lot of us are like you and me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, we're not gay, but we have a lot of sins in our life still.
True.
Do we not?
True.
Do you still believe that that those sins bar you from being a Christian?
Wait, do I believe that those sins bar me from becoming a Christian?
Right.
Okay. Well, then no.
Exactly. And
Right.
I kind of feel in the same way that because a lot of the sins that we deal with,
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is there's some of the old life when we become Christians. Once we accept the gospel, there's some things in the old life that go away rather quickly. Like,
Right.
oh man, like this, sometimes miraculously go away. It's like, man, I don't care about that anymore. My life has changed.
Yeah, like I don't need that. I don't need to smoke cigarettes, or I don't need that drink, or
right. And but then there's also times where certain sins that from the old life, kind of still creep in, and it's like, man, I cannot seem to get rid of this, and it's something that's like almost be like you have to, through time, through prayer and studying the Bible and trusting God, that you work to defeat that old life and to kind of you enslave your body, not your body enslaving you. But it takes time, and it's a lifetime of work. So I believe that sometimes, like, in the case of someone who may be homosexual, like, but they can still be a Christian, because that it wasn't like, oh, well, stop your evil ways. and then accept the gospel. No, that's not what the gospel is about. But that temptation, those sins, it's like, it might take them a lifetime to, kind of change their focus and change their how they uh, do things. It could take them a lifetime to overcome that. And you know what? Like, I don't, just like, whatever sin, like, someone may have, it's like, that's to me, the only unpardonable sin is not accepting Jesus Christ in the gospel. Because that's the only one where, that's the only sin that's going to have you go into hell.
Right. That is, I guess, literally the only sin that will damn you.